An Introduction to Per-Inge Isheden. In London's Mayfair is a Regency building with 8 flights of narrow stairs. Above those stairs, in the highest apartment I first viewed, Inferno, the full milk nymphs pouring champagne, and the domestic and psychological interiors hinted at turn-of-the-century Vienna. Although I didn't recognize the man in the painting, he had the air of a Freud, a Marx, or a Mahler, so I deduced that he might be a 19th century man of letters, shadowed by his boy self in the open doorway behind him. The door ajar, open books and mirror called up Jung, Derrida, and the liminal zone so beloved by psychoanalytic cultural theory. I sipped my drink and in reverie marveled at how the canvas, now painting, and even the nymph's reflective champagne bottle functioned as zone-bending lintels. My host brought me to focus. That's August Strindberg, the famous Swedish author and playwright. He had many troubled relationships with women. And this portrait of him was painted by a contemporary Swedish artist, Per-Inge Isheden. Inferno's internal narrative and zeitgeist references transferred the significant dimensions of the story. The psycho-creative biography of a noteworthy 19th century man of letters. That it so deftly crosses generational and national boundaries is one of the strengths of Isheden's work. This is made evident by his online popularity, for most of his followers know his paintings via MySpace, Facebook, and his website. Fans from as near as the Netherlands and as far as Japan and Brazil have been prompted to visit his studio in Sweden. Fan MCS's online comment, "I love your painting techniques, the colors always reach out to me," echoes the sentiment of viewers from across the globe. Isheden's art touches them aesthetically and viscerally. A pan-global consumerist metropolitan experience permits so many of us to access Isheden's work. I have fans from almost every country I could think of: Japan, Chile, Brazil, Colombia, Gambia, Puerto Rico, Indonesia, Tunisia, Taiwan, Martinique, Croatia, South Korea, Argentina, notes the artist. Certainly, Isheden's nudes and icon portraits relate to a now international Western visual vocabulary. Yet even his Sweden-specific images resonate with non-Swedes. The Stockholm cityscapes parallel other metropolitan scenes, while those of the Swedish countryside echo a nostalgic familiarity with distant pastorals. In cityscapes, like the series Outside NK, Isheden captures the artificial light that punctuates Sweden's winter darkness. Identifying these paintings as experiments in light, color, and texture, Isheden sets his approach within an historical fascination with painting's technical elements. Inevitably, the Impressionists, those recent masters of capturing light, come to mind, but the preoccupation may be traced back further in art history. And Isheden also names predecessors such as Tintoretto, Rembrandt, and Vermeer as influences. An artist pivotal to Isheden's work is Cézanne, whose exploration of picture plane and composition Isheden has studied for decades. In the dislocation of the surface, the bent-up table, the flatness of the painting, and the guided tour for the eyes, Isheden identifies in That Summer When a painting which exemplifies his integration of some of Cézanne's pictorial concerns. In a step-by-step documentation of artist and model, a portrait of Picasso, who, interestingly, was also influenced by Cézanne, we see Isheden's trademark approach in his icon portraits, a trademark approach of creating many picture planes on one canvas. The portrait's physiognomy, composed of references to Picasso's well-known works, the model, and the artist, is reminiscent of Arcimboldo's playful composite portraits of circa the mid-16th century. In one uncanny instance, the portrait of a gardener, The items in the Arcimboldo composition echoed the sitter's profession, as the paintings unmodelled do in this work. 1960s icons and a wink to pop art reverberate in Isheden's work. In adhering to the tradition of the painted canvas and exploring compositional planes, Isheden's icon portraits resound with Lichtenstein's comic frame paintings of the 1960s, and interestingly, hark back to Isheden's earlier career foray in comic book illustration. In subject matter, Isheden's icon paintings echo with Warhol's celebrity portraits of the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. However, there are differences. Isheden explains, "I have, as Warhol did, painted Marilyn Monroe, but for totally the opposite reason. Warhol stated, 'There is nothing hidden underneath my work. What you see is all.' His portrait simply shows what Marilyn looked like. In my work, most of the content is hidden underneath. In the face of the young, beautiful woman, you see a middle-aged, overweight woman in a messy bathroom. This invites you to reflect over what growing older means to a beautiful woman." In painting an imaginary, aging Marilyn Monroe, Isheden presents two related themes of Western visual culture: beauty, as it is embodied by the female form, and the meanings this embodiment might sustain. Isheden's portrait of Norma Stitz, situated by its title within the traditional Venus paintings, explores these two themes with its referential visual overlays. In The Venus of Arlington, Norma Stitz, the subject is clothed rather than nude, as is traditional for images depicting Venuses and odalisques. However, her clothes draw attention to her voluptuous form, rather like the drapes and sheets in other Venus images. The clothes worn by our Venus are comfortable. She is not the wasted prostitute of Montmartre, nor is she the fleshy concubine of court. This is a Venus who lives the ordinariness of our modern world. However, she is not the airbrushed slender blonde, considered a normative beauty by many magazine covers. Stitz poses next to a section of the late 15th century Cluny tapestry, "To My Only Desire." Considered one of the great treasures of Western visual culture, it falls outside the conventional high art canon. Likewise, the statue of the Willendorf woman, previously known as the Venus of Willendorf, is another visual treasure referenced in the image that falls outside this high art canon. Stitz's voluptuous beauty, these referenced treasures, and indeed Isheden's style, described as a mixture of refinement and vulgarity, gathered together in a figurative corner where they create their own new visual magic. Stitz had requested that Isheden paint her, and declared the result closest to my true image. This, paired with suggestions that the Willendorf figure may be a self-portrait, adds further echoes. Venus of Arlington's allusion to the Willendorf woman therefore fuses ancient fertility rituals with a mode of self-representation. Viewers have commented on this visual sustenance, with one online fan unwittingly referencing language of ancient earth goddess traditions. "Dear Per-Inge, Norma is wonderful. She is like one of your ripe pieces of fruit begging to be bitten into. How wonderful for her to have been touched by your brush." Through this representation of herself, Stitz, our Venus, has gifted to the artist and a modern post-industrial humanity a renewed visual fecundity. Venus of Arlington, artist and model, Outside NK, and Inferno present visual escapades both in subject, narrative, composition, and references. Isheden's work is deceptively unpretentious, yet it consciously and conspicuously wears an impish manteau of representational and aesthetic traditions. Fan Renata Kaufmann notes of Inferno what can be said about many of Isheden's layered panoramas. It presents a complete story. While still casting questions about the scene, I could hardly take my gaze from this work. with their mini storylines writ in swirling composition, Isheden's puckish paintings draw us in, and we cannot but be touched by his brush.